Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we have another great video covering the topic of how to budget for lost chargebacks and for how to deal with negative reviews. I know that this can be a pain point for many waste management businesses out there, and I want to share my methodology and framework for handling both of these issues so that way you can apply them to your own business today. I specifically want to cover 3 questions. The first question is going to be how to properly budget for chargebacks. The second question is how can I better understand and therefore reduce the chargebacks that I'm issuing? And number 3, I want to just provide you a framework for how to deal with negative reviews overall. Let's start with budgeting for the lost chargebacks, okay? You'll see that I've got a memo here that lays out 5 different strategies for how to go about your budgeting. I personally would suggest this first one, which is the use of a simple threshold percentage. And I want to run through a quick example for us so that way this makes sense. Let's say, for example, this is your profit and loss statement, okay? You're earning on the top roughly $170,000 a month. And over the last 9 months, you've earned $1.5 million in sales right here. You'll notice that I have a breakout of my cost of goods sold categories here. And one of those categories is our chargebacks, right? And over the last 9 months, we have issued roughly $24,000 of total chargebacks, which represents 1.5% of our total sales. All right. The threshold that I would personally suggest is a 2 to 3% maximum threshold. And let's say, for example, you're this business and you're sitting here. It's like, okay, Kyle, I'm at 1.5%. Like, what do I do, right? So if I see clients have percentages that are below the threshold, I simply tell them, hey, you can improve this if you want to, and we're going to cover that in a moment with the procedure that I've set up. But I wouldn't necessarily prioritize doing anything because there's probably other parts of your business that you are focused on. So go ahead and focus on those things. That's going to drive more value for your business. But if you are above that threshold, say you're in the 4 or 5% range, I think that getting control of your chargebacks is such kind of like low-hanging fruit that you can substantially drive value by prioritizing it a little bit more against other parts of your business that you might be currently focused on. So for example here, let's say you were at 4% of revenue here. That's almost $70,000, but if we could cut this by a good 2% for you, that's $30,000 over the course of 9 months. That's worth a little bit of a prioritization in my mind. And so that 2 to 3% threshold I think is a good kind of benchmark to hold yourself to. But that's the power of taking control back of your chargebacks, is that it can be substantial from a value standpoint, okay? So, but regardless, if you're above or below that threshold, the process that I'm about to lay out for you is one that I think can drive value for your business, not only from a dollars perspective, but also just from an understanding perspective about what's going on within your business, okay? As it relates to chargebacks. So the procedure that I'm gonna break down here is the simple use of a lost chargeback form that's gonna capture certain data points that we will then be able to layer into a data table or a tracker in this case that has 7 fields that we're going to use to analyze what's happening under the hood of our chargebacks. And every single time we issue a chargeback, we will complete the form, fill out this data table, and then every quarter, we can then look at our chargebacks from many different perspectives, okay? I kind of want to show you the value of this first, and then I'll walk you through the form a little bit. So you'll notice that I've got 4 tables here. First table is organizing chargebacks by the service that we provided. Okay, so bin pickup, bin rental, and waste removal. Nothing's particularly jumping out at me here. The waste removal is a little bit high, but nothing, like I said, nothing's like truly jumping out at me that would suggest that the root cause of our chargebacks is the service we're providing. Okay. The next table is going to be our customer type. Here, residential obviously is the bulk of our chargebacks. So that could influence how we change our policy or approach changing something to help us reduce these, right? Next, you'll see that one of the fields on our form is going to be a kind of like a root cause. What is causing this chargeback, okay? And it looks like there is, so a third of our chargebacks are coming from billing errors, which is important because that's something that we can actually control to a certain degree, right? But if we have better procedures from a billing standpoint, that can reduce our chargebacks. And then number two is possibly a service failure, which is also something that's relatively controllable if we're training people the right way and preparing our personnel for success the right way. And then finally, the staff who are involved on the job that the chargeback is related to is another data point on our form, and this would help indicate who might need some training. It also might indicate that they're actually, so what's funny is you'll notice that these are the dollar value of the chargebacks, okay? But, and this is another important point about why capturing this data is so important, if we change this very briefly to count, which is just the frequency of chargebacks, you'll notice that these are all actually the same. Every single staff here had exactly 4 chargebacks. It just happened to be that staff C had the highest dollar value one. Maybe staff C is your best staff and that's why you have them on the high ticket stuff, right? So it might not, this maybe doesn't indicate that staff C needs more training, but the important point is you have the data to see what's going on and then make a decision here, okay? And the way that I would suggest doing this is that you review this every 3 months, okay? And the way this is gonna work is, the form is pretty simple. It starts with the generic customer information here, and then we get into our important data points. First one being customer type. In this case, my kind of placeholders for selection are commercial and residential. That might not be you, but it could be. Then I've got my service type name. Now, this is what we looked at before with the type of service you're providing. I would personally use whatever discrete list of services your business has on its pricing model. But the important point is to be consistent with this. That way, when you're looking at the data, it is comparable. Next, I've got the data service here. Okay, the chargeback issue, this is that root cause we talked about before. And I'm using a simple data validation. That way it's easier on the user. But these are the 5 categories and their respective definitions here. These are just the ones that I put together. The important point here is that you can use any of these or you can add to it. Point is not to have too many, but ultimately the most important thing is consistent measurement and very discrete boxes. That way the preparer is consistently measuring and giving us the data point about the root cause in a consistent way. And then the last pieces are the requested amount of the chargeback and the personnel involved in that particular engagement. You could use something like just the personnel IDs for anonymity's sake if you wanted to. And then finally, I think having a rationale for the chargeback is important, especially when you're looking back. There's no way you're going to remember why you decided X, Y, or Z chargeback was issued necessarily without this. And then the form completes with a preparer and date and an approver and a date. And the way this would work is the person who is effectively probably the most the person who's going to be receiving the customer complaints in the field or on the front end, so it's probably somebody in sales or whoever's handling customer relationships is going to be the one to start this process, and then just designate somebody else who's familiar with what's going on in the business as the approver. That way you've got 2 people looking at this, and then just have the preparer once it's issued. Each of these, right, is just a form or the issuance of one of those chargebacks. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover for the procedure, and then the last piece I wanted to cover was our framework for handling negative reviews. All right, so I don't normally read directly off of my notes, but I think that this framework for handling negative reviews is concise and precise, and I just want to make sure I've got the wording correct here for all of us. So the formula for success as it relates to negative reviews goes like this. Number 1, focus on delivering your product or service well. Keep that at the forefront. Number 2, gather reviews consistently and continually to build your review base. This ensures 2 things. You are consistently receiving constructive feedback from the market. And number two, it doesn't allow a small minority of negative reviews to be too loud, okay? Far too often we do good work, but then don't follow up to get the good reviews, and it creates a slight disproportionality in the review base that you have, if you're doing good work. The overall point of this framework is to let the truth speak for itself. If you're doing good work and you're gathering reviews consistently and being disciplined with that process, your review base will look that way. It will look like you provide good service. You're always going to have some negative reviews. We just have to accept that. And then on the other side, if you're possibly not providing good service or service up to par where it needs to be, the market's going to tell you. And that might hurt a little bit up front, but ultimately that's what's going to give you the agency to make the changes you need to make. If anybody is looking to get their hands on some of the work products that we covered today, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I hope that y'all found this informative and that you can apply some of these frameworks to your business today. Other than that, you all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe if you like the video. My name is Kyle. This is D3, and I'll see you on the next one.